Australia took an unwelcome step towards a club it's been trying desperately not to join, the Global Recession Club. Today's national accounts show the economy went negative for the December quarter last year. One more quarter like that and this country will be technically in recession. But in reality, unless there's some strange aberration nobody can yet foresee, Australia is already in recession. It's now a matter of bracing for the unemployment queue to grow and the budget deficit to get bigger. The opposition says the figures prove that the government's first economic stimulus package late last year didn't work. The government says things would only have been worse if they hadn't introduced the package. That's the argument we're going to hear all year. Kevin Rudd is now preparing for the next summit of G20 nations in London early next month and has challenged America and Europe to close unviable banks and isolate the mountains of toxic assets to get credit flowing around the world again. I spoke with the Prime Minister in Sydney earlier tonight. Kevin Rudd, the national accounts today show that the national economy, with the exception of the farm economy, is in recession. The non-farm economy has now recorded its second successive quarter of negative growth. What are the most worrying aspects of today's figures for you?
Well, the first point, Kerry, is that you know that growth numbers have been calculated since time immemorial, including both the non-farm and the farm sectors of the economy. And going back some time, we've had some periods of negative contribution to growth from the farm sector as well. So these things change over time. If you go to the actual elements of the national accounts themselves, there are strengths still, but there are weaknesses. And you ask specifically about weaknesses, the one which actually stands up out of those national accounts, of course, is the fact that there has been a recourse to inventories by firms rather than bringing in new production into their warehouses for the purposes of on-selling to consumers. But why has all this happened? We're in the midst of a global economic cyclone. These are global factors at work. They're buffeting every economy in the world, and we're not immune.
Are you concerned that your first economic stimulus package hasn't worked?
The key question with our stimulus package is this: had we not done it, what would have been the impact in terms of growth and jobs?
It's not a question of had you not done it, but if you'd done it differently.
No. For us, the key question was this, and I said this, I think, on your program or others at the time. The advice from the Treasury was, when you see the emerging economic storm, this global cyclone building, intervene with stimulus, go early, go hard, go households. You compare where we are, even with this performance on growth in the December quarter, against the rest of the advanced economies in the world. This economy is still performing as one of the top 5 economies of all advanced economies in the world. Let's put this into context. And secondly, if you look at some of the drivers of that, in the rest of the big economies around the world, you've seen a collapse in retail sales and consumption, at least in the large number of them. And in Australia, by contrast, in the December quarter, we saw an improvement in overall retail sales. That comes directly off the back of what we've done in stimulus.
Mr. Swan acknowledged today that a significant part of your package went into household savings rather than household spending. That suggests, doesn't it, that there's some strength in what Mr. Turnbull was arguing, that the package should have been differently directed via tax cuts.
But Kerry, I have consistently said that government can't mandate how individual consumers use their money, whether they spend it, whether they save it, or what they spend it on. And if you look at what has been assisting households in recent times, you've had a 4 percentage point cut in interest rates. And if you're on a $300,000 mortgage, that translates into about a $9,000 a year saving. Some people are using that to pay down their mortgage further. Others are putting into other forms of savings. That's happening over here with monetary policy. Then on fiscal policy, through the payments we made to households in December, remember that was just 1 month in the quarter, obviously some of that was spent, and I've just referred the retail sales figures to you relative to the collapse in retail sales elsewhere in the world, but some of it obviously would have been saved as well. The key question is this: there was no credible alternative strategy, and we are absolutely convinced that had we not done this, then you would have placed at risk many more Australians in terms of the prospect of job loss than is currently the case.
You said at the time of the first package that it was the equivalent of 1% of GDP, that it would create 75,000 jobs. Do you now have any evidence of what jobs have been created, or even of what jobs have been saved, or of what GDP growth your package has actually produced?
Well, Kerry, let's be statistically realistic about this. These payments flowed in December. That is about, 2 or 3 months ago. In terms of putting together, the complete, retrospective analysis of the data, that's simply analytically not possible at this stage.
But isn't it true that it's never really going to be possible to demonstrate it?
Well,
on
that basis, you then flip into the camp of opinion which says the data is always incomplete and therefore do nothing. I have never been in that view. And when presented with the warnings...
Again, with respect, it's not about doing your way or doing nothing. It's about doing it your way. Mr Turnbull argued for alternative ways of spending.
Well, Mr Turnbull actually supported the government's economic stimulus strategy last December. He now opposes the government's economic stimulus strategy because Mr Turnbull is a political opportunist, not interested in an economic strategy for dealing with the global financial crisis, just a political strategy to take advantage of the crisis.
Your most recent budget update said that $115 billion had been wiped off tax revenues for the year. It's a foregone conclusion, isn't it, that tax revenues are going to drop further, probably significantly because we're some way from feeling the full effects of the business investment bust that's on the way or happening already, the big drop in export earnings from the resources boom that's still in the pipeline. That does mean an even bigger budget deficit, doesn't it?